Sparkle has always been considered one of the best supports in Honkai Star Rail, constantly being compared to units like Ron May and Robin, even though she is totally different from both. And finally, in a day or two, we get our first reunion banner for Sparkle. But is she still worth it? Is getting her a better choice than picking our latest debuffer Jiaoqiu? That's what we're going to discuss today. So leave a like if you enjoyed this video and let's get started. So what made Sparkle such a sought after unit in the first place? Well, it all stems from the insane value that Bronya had in the beginning of the game. Being able to fully action advance a unit, literally giving them an extra turn, while buffing them is crazy. In a turn-based game, where you can only deal damage when you get a turn, and Bronya just made every one of your DPS able to take twice as much turns. But this came with a problem in itself, the lack of skill points. Bronya using her skill every turn, with the main DPS doing the same, they were spending skill points faster than they can generate, which bottlenecked Bronya to a more limited amount of teams. Now when Sparkle got released, she was just a better Bronya, being able to do pretty much what Bronya could but better. She had more damage amplification than Bronya, close to similar action advance with a slight difference. I'll explain that in a bit. But more so, she was a stupidly good SP generator. She could generate SP so fast that her kit actually increases the max skill point limit from 5 to 7. Being able to 2-turn ult and each ultimate giving 4 skill points instantly is just insane. And this made her the best hyper carry support in the game. And she is still to this day. Giving buffs like crit, attack and damage with an insanely fast SP generation is something that will always be appreciated by every single crit based damage dealer in the game. Now I said she was a bit different from Bronya. Well, to be precise, unlike Bronya, who lets her DPS take twice the amount of turns with her 100% action advance, Sparkle on the other hand gives 1.5 times, as she can only advance 50%. So it's a bit different, but you can kind of get the same results with a little bit of speed tuning. But over the patches, this slight difference has never caused any issues. In fact, Sparkle has always shown way better results than Bronya for pretty much every single DPS in the game. Let's talk about some of those in a bit more detail. Imbibitor Lunae, the first unit to define the word power creep in Honkai Star Rail. Upon his release, his damage was so over the top compared to other DPSs at the time that players were actually concerned that he might be bad for the game. And now we have units that make Lunae look like a joke. Yeah, I'm talking about these two anomalies. Regardless, Lunae's damage is still super good, but his damage comes with the cost of high skill point needs. And as a hyper carry unit, both Bronya and Sparkle are good match for him. But Bronya herself is a pretty SP heavy unit, and if you compromise a bit, you lose out on her full benefit. And that's what makes Sparkle shine even better. Being able to give Lunae a significantly larger buff with the extra skill points he needs, now Lunae was on a roll. He had no clunkiness, no restrictions whatsoever. He got his best teammate, which still remains true. Another example is going to be Seele. Now I know she kinda sucks nowadays, but she was at one point one of the best DPSs in Honkai Star Rail. And that was because of her incredible passive resurgence that literally allows her to take extra turns when she kills an enemy. It was so insane at the time that players were pulling out straight 6 to 7 turns back to back. But again, more turns mean more skill point needs. And also, the popularity of mono quantum team at the time and the lack of a quantum support not allowing such a team was also something players were concerned about. But Sparkle being able to fulfill both roles made her super popular. Other popular DPSs consist of Argenti, Clara, and by that extension Yan Li. Also other popular hyper carries like Blade and Jingliu, where Bronya was still slightly better because these two units don't struggle with skill points. In fact, they are quite XP friendly, but that's not always the case. With different situations or builds, Sparkle can produce numbers on par with Bronya, or sometimes better than her. And those results made her an overall better and more universal support in general. Bronya was slightly better in some cases, but also had team restrictions. Sparkle on the other hand, doing the same or even better, but without the restrictions. She had access to every single hyper carry team then, and the ones to come in the future. And speaking of the future, let's move on from these old units and talk about some new ones. And since we are comparing her to Jiaoqiu, the one unit that can make or break this argument is Acheron. But before that, if you're enjoying the content, please consider subscribing, as it greatly helps this small channel grow and motivates me to make more content for you guys. Now Acheron has defined herself as the best damage dealer in Honkai Star Rail. Her multipliers are insane, both in single target and AoE. She's lightning but ignores enemy weakness type, has massive self buffs, unique energy mechanics, fast ultimates, and she's goddamn hot. She is someone who has defined her own niche. At this point, if you have a decently invested Acheron, you can pretty much auto every single endgame challenge in HSR. And for sure, having such an awesome unit, you'd want to give her the best team you can. And we do have a lot of other supports, or let's say synergistic teammates that work well with her. But we never had a solely dedicated support until now. With the release of Jiaoqiu, we now have a unit that fills that spot. He's an excellent debuffer with high debuff application, allowing faster ultimates for Acheron, and also has one of the biggest damage amps in HSR. up to 35% damage taken debuff on the enemies, and another 15% ultimate damage taken on top of that. For an ultimate focus unit like Acheron, Jiaoqiu provides the biggest damage increase than any other support. Calculation shows over 50 to 60% personal damage increase over alternatives like Silverwolf. Of course, if we compare the overall damage of a team like this one, the damage difference will be low, but still, Jiaoqiu is undeniably the best support for Acheron. Now, can Sparkle do the same? Well, currently, if you go check out both Acheron's and Sparkle's best teams, or well, the teams that are used most through majority of the players, you can see that Sparkle's best teams has Acheron on it. And similarly, some of Acheron's best teams as well also have Sparkle as a support. Sparkle enables faster rotations, though she is not a debuffer, so she can't really help with her ultimate, but if you have Acheron's signature that gives 2 stacks each time she uses her skill, having a Sparkle that helps her take more turns can actually be better than most other team variants. Of course, Jiaoqiu is still better, but that action advance and the incredible SP generation can be pretty awesome for her. Jiaoqiu is a debuffer who has his ways of applying debuffs similar to Black Swan, where the enemies can stack his debuff on their own, but you still need to use his skill, not so much for the debuffs, but to keep his ultimate up all the time. His ultimate lasts for 3 turns, that gives the extra 15% damage taken debuff, and to keep that active all the time and getting his ultimate back every 3 turns, you either go with an SP negative or SP neutral rotation. I talked about his proper rotations in my guide, you can go check that out, I'll leave the link in the description and in the pinned comment. But regardless, sometimes you may face some skill point issues. Of course you won't if you play him properly, but well, not everyone has perfect builds. And in those times, Sparkle can actually be pretty handy. So she not only can work with Acheron on her own, but can also pair well with Jiaoqiu, showing her overall versatility, which is the factor where Sparkle actually beats Jiaoqiu, at least right now. And for all you people who just want to see some numbers, here are the results of some of my damage simulations with both Sparkle and Jiaoqiu. Of course, Jiaoqiu takes the cake here, as expected, but can he say the same with other hyper carries? Well, I also did some calculations for those, and you can see the results here and judge it for yourself. In terms of sheer versatility, Sparkle is still a better option to go for right now. And finally, just for some extra help, here are some tips for building Sparkle, if you do end up pulling her. For her light cone, her signature is one of the best damage buffing light cones in the game, and it perfectly synergizes with her. So you can consider going for it, but I never recommend pulling for light cones for supports, as all of them are already pretty awesome even without the signatures. Her best alternative is going to be Bronya's light cone, which you can buy from the shop, and I highly advise doing so if you haven't yet. Even if you don't buy any of the others, let it be this one. This light cone will always be viable for any hyper carry support with action advances. The other options can be pretty good, like Dance 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 or Past and Future, but I just advise you to just get the Bronya light cone. It makes her so much better even without a signature. For relics, always use hacker space. You need as much speed as you can, but because of that fact, you can also use some broken sets, like I'm using here. For ornaments, use broken keel or Pentagony sets if you're using a quantum DPS. For stats, this is where all the juices are. You want to first aim for 160 speed on your Sparkle, with as much crit damage as you can. Now both are important stats to have, but I recommend focusing on her speed first. As I said earlier, she's a bit different than Bronya, and gives 1.5 times extra actions. And well, to do that consistently, this is what you need to achieve. If you're not above 160, you might see some weird interactions, where Sparkle won't be able to give an extra turn to your DPS. You can also fix this by speed tuning your other units, but compared to speed tuning just one unit and for the whole team, well, you know which one is easier. And it's not even speed tuning. Anything above 160 speed is fine. There is no definitive goal. Just go above 160 and you're good to go. After that, focus on crit damage. Her crit buff scales on her own crit damage. And those are all the pointers you need to keep in mind while building her. And that brings me to the conclusion of this small discussion. Well, as I just described, in terms of just team variations, Sparkle still provides more than Jiaoqiu. He has synergy with almost all the units in the game, and will probably also pair well with the upcoming Fei Xiao, who is supposed to be a hunt damage dealer. And well, damage dealer loves Sparkle. But when it comes to PR Acheron comms, Jiaoqiu is undeniably the best unit to pull for. And this just repeats my point. If you're only looking to increase your Acheron's damage, then Jiaoqiu is your go-to pick. But if you have a much wider roster, and you want an overall support for your account, then Sparkle is going to be a better choice. And this is what most of you guys have heard from other people. But there's more to it. Frankly, I don't think Jiaoqiu is as much of a niche unit as players are making him to be. Sure, he kinda is right now, but I suppose future units will always favor Jiaoqiu more. And even now, Jiaoqiu can still be quite good with other AoE DPSs, like Argenti. And with these extra factors, I personally would rate Jiaoqiu pretty close to Sparkle. But the one factor that makes pulling for Sparkle right now a better option is the fact that it's a rerun for Sparkle and a release for Jiaoqiu. That means it won't take much time for him to return with his first rerun. But for Sparkle, it would be much longer for her to get a second rerun. And that's why I think, may you be a new player or a veteran, you shouldn't miss out on this awesome support. because God knows when she'll return. And that's all I have on this topic. So is Sparkle worth it? Absolutely. And you should pull for her right now, before you miss out on her again. I tried to be as thorough as possible with my explanations, and I hope you find it helpful if you're struggling to make a decision. Like us if you enjoyed the video, leave any questions you have in the comments. I know I've been slow on the uploads, but well, moving to a completely new place is a time-consuming process, especially when the place is pretty far away. But that said, I'm finally back, and with the start of the second half of this patch, we can expect the version livestream pretty soon as well. And with that comes my analysis and guides on all the upcoming units. So stay tuned for those. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.